Now about, about a month and a half ago, a little over that, he sent me the email and asked me to preach. And at that time, I looked at the wrong lesson. Because of the, why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? I had it reversed. I thought my grandfather was preaching the other topic. So for the first 2 weeks, I kind of had that rolling around in my head. And then I re-looked at my email the one day when he sent a reply back to me, and I said, oops, wrong one. But it did make me realize something, that you cannot, it's a little difficult to look at why do good things happen to bad people when we have to put that in comparison somehow. When we look at somebody and say that they're a bad person, I mean, we obviously have our outliers, but when you look at somebody and you consider them a bad person, the judgment that we put there, and then saying they're having a good life, things are going good. So I took 3 lessons out of this. Our first lesson, well, first to start out, it's a bit difficult for me to preach this lesson because a lot of my outlook on life, and part of this is just being a young adult, and I like to think that for the most part, we get a lot of what we deserve. A lot of us are either what we deserve or sometimes what God will let us handle. Recently, about 2-3 months ago, a lot of changes took place in my life. Where I was living, I had my roommate, and I had to move out of there, unfortunately, take care of a few things. And a lot of things happened really fast. I lost my job. I had to get another one. For a few weeks, I lived either with whatever friend would let me sleep on their couch, or at my parents' house, which was an hour away, or slept in my car once or twice. It got a little rough. And then I looked back at my roommate, my old roommate. My old roommate had turned the opposite way. Had decided that, got into drugs a little bit, had gotten to the point where he was selling. Eventually that ended up taken care of on his own part, but his life was turning out really well. Brand new car, everything was turning out. And it's really hard to look at that, even though I had that idea of you kind of get what you deserve or what God will let you handle. And it's really hard to look at that and go, how is his life turning out better than mine? How is someone who's doing so many things wrong getting so much right? I'm going to look at, even though that's a small example, I'm going to look at some of the bigger examples. You have some of your dictators. Hitler, multiple castles, an eagle's nest that was built specifically for him. There was to some thought, an impenetrable fortress. He was the amount of worth that man had in just some of the buildings, and the amount of damage that he did to so many lives. Saddam Hussein, the amount of killings and assassinations that he did, the amount of things that he inappropriately followed, but yet he supposedly had a net worth of $2 billion. And some say he had a net worth of $22 billion because of a $20 billion amount that they couldn't prove was his, but said that he was hiding. And then somebody else gave me this example that I had never heard of, a man named Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar was the richest Colombian drug lord. He was so rich, he was convicted of drug smuggling, trafficking, assassination, bombing, political, everything. Everything you can possibly get to. He was convicted for it. When the Colombian government finally convicted him for it, he didn't want to get sent over to the United States and put in one of their prisons because he knew he'd be sent there and spend the rest of his life in prison. So he had enough money and enough things going right for him. He tried to bribe the Colombian government, and he could have, to pay their entire national debt all at once. This man had so much money that he was bringing it in so fast, he couldn't hide it. So he was keeping it in his attic. And he was actually writing off, just pretending it didn't exist. Every week he was writing off $3 million. Can you imagine $3 million, you're just like, it doesn't exist. And the reason why was he was bringing it in so fast that he had rats in his attic that were eating the money. He was actually losing that much money, and it didn't mean anything to him because he was making so much. How can we look at that and think, that man is doing so many things wrong, assassinating people? I mean, he caused so many, the drugs that he sold caused so many people to falter. And he had that much money. I'm going to look at Psalm 73, verses 4 through 12. Psalm 73. It'll come up on my phone. Now this is, as he's talking about the evildoers, and he's saying, for they have no pangs until death. Their bodies are fat and sleek. They are not in trouble as others are. They are not stricken like the rest of mankind. Therefore pride is their necklace. Violence covers them as a garment. Their eyes swell out through fatness. Their hearts overflow with follies. They scoff and speak with malice. Loftily they threaten oppression. They set their mouths against the heavens, and their tongue struts through the earth. Therefore his people turn back to them and find no fault in it. It might not be. There we go. Sorry if you can't hear me. But he's talking about all these people that were doing so many horrible things, and their pride, and imagine wearing violence as a garment. And they were proud of this, and they were having good lives, and everything, their eyes swelling out through fatness, their hearts overflow with follies. They're having good lives because they're doing so many wrong things. How does that happen? But in the end, he ends up talking about how he was taken care of, even though sometimes these good things happen to bad people, but these people go on through their entire lives believing that because good things are happening, that they're in the right. When we truly, even though bad things may happen to us, and we have to examine that in retrospect of it, even though bad things might be happening to us, we have something else. Now I'm going to go down a little bit of a lower scale, judging our neighbor's wealth compared to us. When I lived with my grandfather, my car was, I had a good car, things were going pretty well. It kind of fell apart every now and then, and I'd get a little bit upset about it. And one of the things that I got upset about was my dream car was an RX-8, Mazda RX-8. I love that car, it's beautiful. My next door neighbor had one. It's right across the street. And I remember coming home every day and looking at that car and going, man, if I had that car. And then one day I watched him come out, and I didn't really know the man very well, whether he was good or bad, until that day. And I watched him, as his dog came out, he beat his dog because it ran away. He was very physically abusive to that dog, and I fully believe that a lot of the times you can tell a person's nature by the way that they treat those less physically capable than them. Adult, whether it be a dog, a child, that sort. And I believe that man was obviously in the wrong, but I could only see that one thing. I didn't know what was really in his heart. I didn't know what was really there. I'm going to go to Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 3. It says, "Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use it, you will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own? And then I'm going to read John 7, verse 24. If I can get to it. It says, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. One of the things that I had heard growing up from one of my teachers that was really close to me, she said, never judge a person's outsides never judge a person's insides based on what you see of their outsides. We see someone who seems bad, and we decide that because they're bad, and even though they're having a good life, we think that it all looks good and grand. But in reality, sometimes we never know. I don't know if that man had trouble in his life. We don't know if just because he looked like he had a good life doesn't mean that he really did. All of us face trouble. Whether we're a good person or a bad person, we all face strife. We all face good times. What we have different than those that are bad, and why we have to be able to not focus on judging them, at the end of the day, we have somebody. A lot of times they don't. A man who spends his entire life killing, thinking that he's the biggest man in the world, that nobody can stop him, that he has everything he ever wanted. Is he really happy? At the end of the night, when he lays down, who does he have? He might have all the people that are around him only because of his money or his power. He might have all of that, but does he have what we have? What we have as Christians is somebody to talk to at the end of the night. When that comes down to it, that's prayer. We have something more than they do. A personal favorite song, which I asked him to sing for the invitation, is Tempted and Tried. And as you're going through the song, it says, all these things are happening to all these good things are happening to bad people, bad things are happening to good people, and we don't know why. That song gets me through the week. I asked him to sing it for a specific reason. When I'm going through work and I see, last night for example, where my line ended up having to stay over because somebody else made a mistake. Their life's going great and they decided to leave and left us stranded. And even though we were trying to work hard, we ended up getting the bad end of it. I look at that and I got upset, and immediately I was upset with that person. That song gets back into my head and I think, we've got a heaven to go to. We've got a place that we have to remember that those bad people sometimes don't have. They don't see their wickedness. They don't see what we see. There's a song. One morning, I got out of work. I had a long drive home. I was upset. Somebody else had gotten, this whole situation. Little known song by Ty Herndon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's called Pray For Me. I'm just going to read off the lyrics. It says, he had a bottle in his left hand, an old Bible in his right. I thought, now there's a sinner when he asked me for a light. He hit me for $1, just turned and walked away. I was feeling high and mighty when I heard the old man say, pray for me. Please, brother, pray for me. And I will pray for you. I thought, who is he to pray for me as I hit my power lock? And then the weight of my hypocrisy fell on me like a rock. I caught him at the corner and I gave him my last 10. I say, please forgive me, brother. And until we meet again, please pray for me, and I'll pray for you. In the end, God asks us to pray for these people. The bad things that are going on in their lives. Even though it's difficult for us, we have to examine ourselves and get that third lesson out of it. That we need to pray for them. That eventually they'll see what they're doing wrong, and they'll be able to have the peace that we have. Even though we might be having a rough life, at the end of the day, when our head hits the pillow, we have a friend. Doesn't matter what bad things have happened to us or what good things have happened to others. We have somebody to pray to. And we have to remember that. We have to remember to constantly be in prayer, constantly be talking with Him, and things will turn out okay for us. God only gives us what we can handle. And in the end, we have to remember that. I'm going to ask Him to lead us in the invitation song. And I ask that while we sing it, we really focus on the words that are in it. And that to remember that in the end, we'll know why everything is as it is.